Welcome, Soundies, to our Sound for Video session. Today is the 24th of May, 2020, and today we have a very special guest, Mr. Michael Wynne. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Curtis, thank you for having me. Great to see everybody here.
And I like your new haircut, by the way. You were sporting some pandemic hair a couple of weeks ago, I think it was.
Yes, and this is my phase 2 pandemic cut, which is
Okay.
basically clippers, and I'm trying to inspire my 4-year-old son to do the same thing, and we've almost got him convinced, but it's liberating and freeing to actually, I might just go like this from now on. We'll see what
All right.
happens.
All right. All right. Well, we have a variety of things we want to talk about today. We've got it looks like the audience is showing up from just about everywhere in the world here. We've got, let's see, Camille is coming at us here from the Netherlands. We've got Kendra from Minnesota. We've got Peter from New Zealand. Vincent is here with us today. Here we go. I mean, we're all over the place. Welcome, everybody. So glad to have you.
Vincent Rothenberg, right? Vince, am I saying that right? There's a Vincent that also is on my channel and on Facebook. But anyway, yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, we got some Montana, Dubai,
Yeah.
so on and so forth. So thanks, everybody. What we're going to do here, let me just switch over real quickly. We do have an agenda here. So, of course, we're really pleased to have Michael here with us today. Michael is, I'm going to let you tell your story. But first, before we do that, let's have you tell us a little bit about your signal chain today. What are you using there for audio?
Ooh, okay. So audio is pretty simple. I have a Mac tower right behind me, and I am powering a first generation Sound Devices Mix Pre 3 bus powered via the USB-C to a USB 2.0 cable. So it is powering and acting as an audio interface, which I am therefore piping to our StreamYard here via Chrome.
Okay.
Oh,
and what's your mic? Yeah.
Yeah, like that's important. That's the first part of the signal chain, isn't it? This is an AKG C414B ULS, which is one of the previous models that I purchased probably 20 years ago. So
wow. Okay. Now, this actually will lead us into something that I'm hoping we can talk about a little bit here from the start. So, you've been doing production sound for film and television for how long now?
Okay, so I did my first independent film project on a 48-hour film festival in 2004.
Okay.
And I continued to do independent projects on production and post all the way till 2012. And then in 2013, I joined IATSE Local 479, which is the labor union for the film industry here in Georgia. And then I've been doing union narrative TV and film projects since then for about 6 years.
Okay. And when you started working on the independent work, you had some other background in recording and mixing too, right? I mean, that you didn't just start there, I think, is my impression.
Yeah, that's right, Curtis. I mean, I started off in music in the late 90s, recording my own bands and then moving to singer-songwriters. And then I was literally finding bands to work with me in a studio that I would sublet with an owner. And then I got into working with picture, working on short films, and then worked also a lot of those years from 2004 to 2012, working in post in the commercial and ad and corporate world.
Okay. So, yeah. And I think, I don't know if that's a really common thing, but it seems like a lot of the production mixers I know have a background in music.
Oh, yeah.
Is that your experience?
I think all of us as audio guys have just these shared interests in things that bring us into the business. Like we all have these different pathways that we come about getting into the business. And a lot of it, just comes from, I've met a lot of people who were musicians who just were passionate and was the guy or gal who was responsible for recording their own band and fell into it like that. And
Mhm.
I've met people coming from live sound and post
Yep.
over to production. It's all over the place, but you're right. There's a lot of similarities.
Yeah. Yeah, and even the live sound guys, a lot of the live sound people are, what are they doing 90% of the time? I mean, there are panel discussions and,
Oh yeah,
corporate presentations, but there's a lot of music too. And there's a lot
absolutely.
of, the magic that happens when they're running 20 some channels into a big board and trying to avoid feedback and, make it sound great
Yeah.
for that event. So,
I mean, I have the utmost respect for the guys working in live because that is just an immense amount of pressure,
yeah.
to do that, and everything happens in the moment. I mean, at least in the film business, we get to take 1 and 2 and 3,
Mhm.
sometimes. But, yeah, and, us audio guys, I mean, I think no matter where you're coming from or what your background is, there's just common fundamentals that we all share. We all have to learn the basics of signal to noise and signal flow, and have a basic understanding of how sound travels through a mixing console, different types of microphones. And this is across all the fields, I find, whether it's studio or live or film, or no matter what compartment you fall into.
Mhm. Yeah,
And you
for
can
sure.
bring all those backgrounds with you wherever you go, as your career, like often all of us do, twists and turns different places.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And I think, for example, one concept that I think didn't become really clear to me until I started doing a little bit of live work was the whole concept of routing was
Mm.
it was a little mysterious until I got onto a big board and I had to start doing some things there and doing different feeds to the different stage monitors and using the auxes and all that kind of business. And so there's some benefits to getting your hands dirty at that stuff.
Absolutely. And, I came in right into the sound business working in studios when that transition was happening from analog to digital. So, I almost was known in Atlanta at a certain time as the Pro Tools guy. And it was, I was in my mid 20s and I was sharp and I knew Pro Tools. And a lot of the times I would meet these engineers who were working in Atlanta on these large format consoles, and I could actually literally pick their brain. And that's how I learned signal flow, is working in studios from audio engineers. But it's amazing to me, Curtis, just today, how the landscape has changed. I mean, I don't know how many of those same studios are still open today.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of the younger sound professionals coming up are coming through different avenues, like here, like YouTube or Facebook, or just the different mediums where they're meeting. We have more access to industry professionals, but I'm often very curious how those learning platforms now are taking place, especially from someone who's not maybe enrolled into like a formal institution or so forth,
Mhm.
and is learning on their own, which was the case for me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I studied music a couple years in college and then left to go pursue a career in a rock band in Atlanta. I mean, that's how far out I was and disconnected. But the thing is that, you just, I always felt like I was at that disadvantage because I didn't have that Full Sail degree, or, this fancy audio degree. So I knew that going out working in the industry, I was going to have to work really hard to prove myself and show these employers that I was going to be able to compete and do what these other guys do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's all a good point. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's really, I think that's one thing I find over and over again. And we'll have some questions here in just a minute
Mhm.
that were submitted from some folks here from our soundies, as I call them.
Yes.
How do you make your path? And what Michael Wynne did 15, 20 years ago may not work today. It may be a
Yeah.
completely different path today. And that's okay. It's just a matter of
Right.
figuring it out and finding your way. So, all right.
Yeah.
Let me circle back if it's okay. I didn't talk about
Sure.
my
Yeah.
signal chain if I can real quickly here. We
Oh,
have
yeah.
a new little something here. See if we can put this up there. This is today's microphone. We have an Earthworks SR314.
Oh,
This is
wow.
this is actually a handheld condenser microphone for live performance.
Wow.
which we thought we'd just, we've got it in for review, so we thought we'd throw it up there. It's made out of stainless steel. It's a looker, I'll say that.
And they make a lot of ribbon microphones, high-end ribbon mics, right?
They do, and measurement mics and things like that. So, when they're measuring rooms and things like that, it's some scientific purposes too. So they've got kind of an interesting history.
Well, your voice sounds great through it.
It's okay. All right.
Yeah, man.
Well, maybe it's a keeper then, I guess. We're running this in through an Universal Audio Apollo X6. It's going through an emulation of a Teletronics LA2A, just to do a little compression, kind of sweeten. Well, not sweeten things, but just kind of get the loudness where I was looking for. That goes into the camera here, which is a Canon C200. Comes into the A10 Mini Pro, a little capture card switcher, and then into the stream here. So that's what we're looking at on this end.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about the fact that you're running it to your camera, so you're obviously avoiding any of the inherent delay of the video out.
Exactly.
And so I have to ask, how am I doing right now on this streaming? Is it looking good?
You are a little out of sync, but I don't think it's going to be a problem for us here today.
I'm going to secretly adjust it when you're talking.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, that's cool. Okay, let's see what else we've got on the agenda here for today. Okay, we've talked about our signal chains. We've introduced our friend Michael here. For those who are not aware, we do have a Zoom F6 course. It's out and available now. So for those of you that are working with the Zoom F6, cool little recorder, that is available over at school.learnlightandsound.com. We've talked a little bit about your career, Michael, but I was hoping we could talk a little bit about the more recent stuff you've done. So you are working on, you've worked on some pretty, big productions that people have heard the names of. And so I'm curious kind of how you worked from 2013 when you joined the union and started, working in earnest on, the budget films and television shows. Kind of how did that evolve take us maybe from 2013 to present, just kind of in a nutshell, I guess.
Well, really, I had a lot of help from other sound professionals and mixers in the community as far as segueing into more mixing roles during that period, trying to go from independent to union shows. And I did a lot of networking, and I also did a lot of day playing and day work as a sound utility with different mixers to really show them not only that I was capable of being on set and working on a union set as a mixer, but also knew the roles of the sound utility and could be a part of their team. Because really, in the film business, it's a strange thing because they want you to have the experience in order to get the job, but at the same time, they want you to also have the experience to continue to have it. And I didn't say that very well. So, I mean, basically what I mean is you almost already have to be there to get there. Yeah. And that's kind of the puzzle that you have to figure out. And I think no matter where you are in your career, I think the lesson that I learned is no matter what opportunities that I received, whether it was an independent film or low budget tier 1 movie, and maybe the rates weren't as good as I would have liked to other type, higher end projects, I always gave 110% to every single project. And no matter where I was in my career, I have this mantra is you should always do the best you possibly can with where you're at and really try to avoid from looking, oh, I need to be over here and then it's going to be great, because really all of the opportunity I ever got, I received when I was actually ready for it. And there was times where I may have been frustrated where I didn't get a job, or I would interview and, I still interview and sometimes don't get the job. Sometimes I do, because the jobs that I get, sometimes there might be 4 or 5 other people interviewing for the same position. Mm-hmm. So, and then all of a sudden you'll get an opportunity when you're not trying hard and you'll realize that was the right time. Because some of these opportunities, when I finally did receive, some of the bigger jobs, I was so glad it didn't come sooner, because I needed all that time on set, working as a sound utility, day playing, all of those independent films, mixing all of the post work, mixing and working to be prepared for that job.
Now, you touched on something really, really interesting I'd like to ask you about. you have a solid background in post as well.
Yeah.
How has that influenced your career as a production mixer?
It's absolutely helped me 100% because I'm very aware of what the capabilities are in post-production as far as what they're able to do with the dialogue editing process, what the different roles are as far as the sound supervisor, dialogue editor, sound designers, music mixers, the re-recording mixers, and also know how to speak the language. So it helps make collaboration easier when working with post. But one thing I don't do is when I'm working as a production sound mixer is I don't try to put on that post-production hat. I really try to just pull from those experiences and leave those communication lines open with post so I can have those conversations for a working relationship. So
Mhm.
it's been very valuable for me.
Okay, and it seems like too you can probably deliver a better product that way too. I know when I did my first few jobs, and this was the case where I'm wearing a sound bag. I'm the bag and I'm the boom op at the same time, and so I'm
Mhm.
the sound guy. I'm the
Oh
sound
yeah,
department all in one person.
done that
Um,
too.
I was scared to death at the end of the day. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I don't think I have anything that they're going to be able to use. Um,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
think that once you get some of that experience, especially if you have worked in post,
Yeah.
you know what's possible to do in post, what's not going to be possible to do in post, and so it feels like you're in a better spot to say, hey, know when to spend, to cash in those chips to say, hey, you know what, I do need a retake on this one, or just to say this is not the time to call for a retake. I think we got everything we need.
Certainly. I mean,
Yeah.
you make a really good point. I mean, because a lot of the times, yeah, you might be working on an independent project where it's just you, a bag, and a boom, and being able to think in a way of how can I make this work best for the tools that I currently have really is the approach to take. And and being able to communicate that language with post production and whoever's in charge of doing the audio post. And oftentimes it's just the assistant editors. I mean, sometimes we'll be in season 1 of a TV show and it'll be episode 7 before there's even an audio post team brought on board. So
Mhm.
we're having conversations with the assistant editors who are assembling the footage, oftentimes that they're taking your audio and syncing it to the timeline and preparing it for the editor because they're wanting to have rough cuts to show to the producer before it's even getting a proper mix. So they're listening to and assessing your production sound mix for not only the dailies, but also rough cuts of the show.
Yeah. Ooh, that's got to be. I'd be sweating. I know.
Yeah.
So
But
so
yeah, go
but you're
ahead. Mhm.
delivering it. You're delivering a mix too. So they're probably using the mix to show the
Yeah,
producer, or okay, okay,
absolutely. I mean,
okay.
providing the mix that we deliver on set, the expectation is that it is clean, clear, quality dialogue. It should sound great. And
Mhm.
providing that your live sound good, your ISOs are good, you got your set decently quiet, and you got the boom is sounding good. It's just a matter of skill, repetition, and experience to really help deliver that,
Yeah,
on a
yeah,
consistent basis.
yeah.
So that's
Okay.
a really good feeling when you go from I'm not really getting at and if you're in the indie world and you're working, that's the time that you can
Yeah.
really make those mistakes and figure out, well, how do I get a good mix? Because a lot of what we do to get a good mix per se is not necessarily what's happening on your hands, Curtis. It's what's happening on set. And it has to do with knowing the dialogue and knowing and having that symbiotic relationship with your boom op and knowing what they're going to get and what you're going to get.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
it's that, that second nature that kicks in
yeah,
that you're
yeah, and
hoping
having
for.
yeah, exactly, and having that
Yeah.
relationship too, and that trust level with your boom op, I have to
Oh
imagine
yeah.
as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it can be a lot of fun because really, you know, um, I recently had music playback on my channel, John Maskew, and we were talking about some of the scenarios that we walked into on a day 1 of BET's American Soul season 2. And we had this really complex scene where we were in a recording studio. We had 3 actors on one side of the glass, all of them singing, one of them talking, and then 2 talent on the other side of the glass, a producer engineer playing that role, of course, talking as well. So we had to do talk back through the console. They had to be able to hear each other back and forth, and also provide music playback and not have it step on the dialogue of the producer engineer. So it was like this really cool thing. So long story short, and then you do it, then you figure it out, and it involves everything. The sound utility involves music playback, boom, and you get that take one and it works. And that's what it's all about. You go, yes.
Yeah.
All of that groundwork and worked. And that's what you really do, with the relationships on your sound team, is you celebrate the successes and you make things fun, because, challenges are just challenges. They're not something, I don't look at anything on a film set as daunting. I mean, really, I see it all as opportunities. It just depends. If I see an impossible wardrobe, I'm going to figure out a way to mic it. I mean, that's just the way I work.
You like the challenge and the experience.
Yeah. I was talking to a mixer, who recently, who did a Netflix show, and they were putting microphones on the body, directly on the body, taping it right on the skin.
Whew.
And they were painting it out in VFX. And that mixer was able to have those conversations ahead of time and catch it in the script and develop those relationships to make that happen. And it was a win situation. So it's that's what I mean by a lot of the mix actually happens outside of the fingertips.
Interesting. Interesting. Let me just show something here. This is something you might be familiar with.
Oh, what is
some
that?
of our
I'm just kidding.
Some of our audience may not have heard of this. So this is and you'll have to correct me, Michael. I think you say Aaton. Is it Aaton?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Aaton Cantar X3.
Yeah, and I didn't know either. It was Aaton, which is exactly right. The Aaton Cantar X3. That's right.
Okay. And you, so up until now in your career, you worked, I think, a lot with the 688 from Sound Devices, but you recently invested in the Cantar X3. And I'm really curious to ask, why the switch? What was it about the Cantar? I mean, I hate to make this like a clickbaity thing, like why I'm switching from Sound Devices to Aaton. I mean, it's
exactly.
But there's something that drew you to this. I'm curious. Can you kind of give us a little background on that story?
Oh man. Well, before I used a 688, it's worth mentioning that I had a 788. I also owned a Tascam HDB2. I had a 702T, a 552, a 302. I've owned mostly Sound Device products, which I still have all of them. Besides the 302, I still have the 552. And the Cantar first came to my attention when I noticed some of the mixers here in the Atlanta market switching over to it. And I thought to myself, that looks interesting. But it wasn't really calling me in, because I really was very happy with what it is that I had. And more mixers started switching over to the system. Then they started having sales, and I still was like, I'm not buying this Cantar, because then I started looking at the specs and, the track count, the input output capability, the workflow, all of those different variables. And I had just upgraded to the 688 less than 2 years ago from the 788. And I tend to stay behind, Curtis, with my gear at least 3 to 5 years. And that kind of comes from just, I think, my background at working with Pro Tools, which it would take 5 years for it to be stable. And you would just wait. All pros always waited. We never bought the latest, greatest stuff. That was for educational institutions and so forth, because it needed to be stable. And so much of our technology right now has so much software built into it versus the older technology, the mixers, recorders. And so the X3 was first announced in 2013 or 14 and shipped in 2015. So it's actually been on the market for 5 years now. So I got a demo because they extended this sale. I said, I'm just going to get a demo and play with this thing. And I still had no intentions of buying it. And I went around my house I didn't make a video about, I didn't want to talk about it. It was just me and the Cantar. And I listened to it and I just could not believe what I was hearing. And I was so taken back by the sound of this machine, Curtis, that I then had recorded some samples of the Scorpio versus the 688 on a video I had done versus the preamps. And I pulled the Cantar files that I recorded into Pro Tools. And I have a Dolby calibrated studio. It has 26 panels in here. So I hear the truth in here. And I listened back without headphones, and it sounded like cinema to me. And from there, that was really the realization that I need to switch to this machine, because it had mostly to do with the fact that I felt like I could get a better sound from it. And then after that, really, I do a lot of television, and we have very high track counts, sometimes exceeding over 12 inputs, which was my capability on the 688. And we would easily do that, especially on the shows that I work on that have a lot of music playback and performance elements and different things. I would have to do sub mixes with the 552 to feed into the 688 because my track counts were getting higher. So the Cantar X3 can do up to 56 simultaneous inputs. So the input count was better. It had more tracks, so I could do 24 tracks on the machine, and it has 52 outputs. And what's interesting too, and the things that I've grown into, because I'm still learning this machine. I mean, obviously we're in pandemic, production is shut down right now. So is where your hands are on it really kind of fall into place depending upon the function that you're doing. And all of that stuff was afterthought discovery after I purchased it. So there's a lot of specs about the Cantar X3 that make it a really great fit for the workflow that I'm doing. And so I built out my cart and expanded with the X3 and then the Cantar S, which we can't forget about that, which is their mixing system. So hopefully that answers a question on why I switched over. It was really a matter of just sonic pleasure. Is that a word? Does that sound weird? And then everything else has been like, like sunlight readable display. Like, I mean, I'm wearing glasses right now. I got to be honest with you. I really can't see the new 8 series recorders displays because I struggle with it because my vision's not that good. It's not that the display's not good, but there's more information in there now than there was on the 6 series. So if you notice, the font is a little bit smaller. So it's, and that's not a problem. And obviously you got this beautiful, workstation they have. And I love my sound devices stuff. This is not about that because I'm holding on to all my sound devices machines because I built a 688 CL12 cart on a Super Zuka cart as a second cart to have where the big cart can't go. So I think when I think of equipment and gear, I'm really trying to, number one, be as modular as I can be, meaning I need pieces to do different functions. And this latest build with the X3 and the 688 CL12, and then don't forget 633, which is the little brother, which, man, that thing I put to work all the time too, is really, they can now feed each other all via AES. So now if I need to expand on any given machine, I have a preset here in my X3 here that actually, you see this big, beautiful screen right there, that actually is a submix of my second cart to add 6 more channels of wireless for 18 total channels of wireless, in which I can feed an Aaton mix into a subgroup here and then have one fader control on a Dan Dugan auto mix and then mix just the first 12 channels on the X3. So that's just an example of like how flexible it is. And then it can also be really, really small too, Curtis, because, I just make sure that I'm going to hold it so the screen can hear it. So it also can be really, really small because you have these 10 faders here on top as well. So you don't have to worry about turning the encoders like on the box style machines, and then you have your 8 trims, and all of them are fully sealed too. Like these are literally magnetic. So if I take it off, you can hear
Oh, wow.
the magnet
Yeah.
dropping, and then it
Yeah.
just catches. So that way you can literally, you don't have to ever worry about having to get dust or dirt down in it. And these are magnetic, but I'm scared to take them off. These I've seen it done, but supposedly you can just, take these right off. And it's, you know, it's not a, it's for me, Curtis, it's not about best, better, or worst. It's really about what does the job specifically, for the capabilities that I need for any given function. And where we really get into trouble on TV and film sets, or where things get confusing, is when you do not have a system that's built to be flexible and modular and fast, to work in ways that doesn't require you to, at the end of the day of a 14-hour workday, spend 2 hours rebuilding your kit to make, because I have done a lot of rebuilding, moving wireless from here to here and here to here. And when I added the X3 and built out this cart, I told myself, I'm going to get this to work in a way where I don't have to pull gear out of each system anymore. I'm going to have small, medium, and large. And all 3 of these things, I haven't connected all 3 yet, but all 3 of these things can work in tandem with one mix track and all ISOs and delivery on one card. So,
Wow.
yeah, so you just, yeah, so, hypothetically it sounds great, but, but I have done, like, hooked them up together and created these submixes, because it's really just about working the way that you need to work. And hopefully that answers the question. I feel like I went on a
Yeah. No.
whole thing there.
No, I think that was an education for all of us. I think that was perfect.
Yeah. And it's
So,
an education for me too, Curtis, because it's like
yeah.
a lot of the things that you find out. And that's why I always encourage people, get the demos from the dealers, try out the gear, because sometimes you need to get it in your hands and really mess with it to know what it's going to be for you. And the X3 is really, it's not just about input, output, technical capabilities. It's also very much about how you want to work and the ergonomics of that experience. Because when you're spending that 12, 14 hours a day, you want that machine that you're using to be the machine that is the most enjoyable experience for you to work, and allows you to do it in a way that's not a struggle too.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that. I have to say that the first time I saw the X3 was at NAB 2016. So it had
Yeah.
been shipping for a little while. And my friend Scott Vanderbilt was there with me, and he's like, "Hey, let's go check out the Aaton booth." And I'm like, "What's Aaton?"
Yeah. Yeah, that would be me too. Yeah.
And so we went, he said, "Oh, dude, this is like the Cadillac of mixers. You have to see this thing." And so we went over and we got a little, there was no one else there. So they were kind of off in this weird part of the building. It was a different building, actually. Anyway, we went there, and at that point in my experience, my eyes were, this big when I saw it, and I was like, wow, that is something. But what I think now, with another, 4 years of experience under my belt, I have a greater appreciation now for what they set out to accomplish with the X3 that
Yeah.
I didn't really recognize at that point when I actually got the hands-on demo. And so
Yeah, me
for
too.
me,
Yeah.
it's one of those funny things where you don't know what you don't know until
Yeah,
you have the
and
experience.
and my first instinct when, because I was so comfortable on my 688 CL12, and I could get really, really good results out of that. And I, that's so important to know your gear. It has to be second nature for you, no matter what you use. It has to be backwards, forwards, blindfolded. So, when the Cantar came into my vision, and I started to feel the pull, I just resisted. I was like, and I would find everything wrong with this machine from a technical standpoint. I was like, well, it doesn't have this. It doesn't have this. This is old technology. That's and the truth is that it's easy to get caught up in the tech game, because excuse me, because you got to be careful, because sometimes that's a sales and marketing game. It's not really a end user functionality game. Like these track counts that just go to insanity, and just, on a production film set, you're never going to use that, and 99 times out of 100, there might be that one time, but it's just things like that are important to think about.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
When you get the gear itch, like, cause I get it. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to go buy this, and I have to tell myself, no, stop. You don't need that. I have
Think it through. Think it through.
my inner sound therapist. You have that guy too, right, Curtis?
Oh, yeah. I think that's pretty obvious.
Exactly.
But what's, another thing that's cool about where you live, and actually this happened. We went to Los Angeles right before the pandemic,
Mhm.
and you've got True Audio, you've got Gotham there in town. You can go down, and it's not the same if you're going to be in the shop, but you can at least put your hands on these things a little bit and
Yeah.
start to see what it's about. And I think even for the audience here, you may not be able, you may not be in one of those markets where you can go to one of those shops, but you can, volunteer to help. If
Sure.
the sound department needs somebody else on and this is probably going to be non-union jobs, of course, but
Yeah.
independent pieces, but still it's an opportunity kind of to start to get that experience, because the thing too is, I wonder, and this is a question for you, Michael, this is
Mhm.
somebody starting out, are they going to be able to hear the difference between a Sound Devices Scorpio and a Cantar X3?
Yeah, I
You
don't know.
required this.
I
Yeah.
can't answer that question. I mean, it's I think it's just, what we hear, from a microphone or recorder, so much is, subjective,
Mhm.
and how it is that we hear and how that we listen. And, I'm thinking of this really strange analogy. I back in the 90s, I worked for Guitar Center for a year. I sold guitars, and all of the new guitar players who would just like strum chords would prefer the low action of the Martin DM, which had
Mhm.
like a spruce top and a mahogany back, and it was a very even sounding guitar for strumming. So
Mhm.
it had very low action, so it was very easy to play. However, our bluegrass guys or more experienced players would prefer the sound of, say, a D35. Now, this guitar had higher action, it was more difficult to play, and it was more rigid, but it had more sonic variety, especially when you play more dynamically.
Mhm.
And you had to be playing at a certain level in order to even hear or appreciate that. So I think when it comes to microphone and gear, it's, the technology is so good right now. And I mean, I wish when I was starting out, there was the products that there were today. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Like just what you can get for price value is, you just got to buy what you can afford. And the best that you can afford is what you should get. And sonically, to answer your question, I can hear the difference. To me,
Yep.
it's plain and obvious. But does that mean that one is better than the other? No. What it means is, it's just, to my ears, I prefer the sound.
Yeah. And you can deliver
Yeah.
a product that you feel like your clients, the production's going to
Yeah.
be happy with. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, good. We're about 40 minutes in.
Okay.
Are you okay jumping over to some questions?
Yeah.
We did have some
You kidding
questions
me?
submitted.
Let's
All
do it.
right, let's do this. So the first one here was from Scott, and Scott had a series of questions, and maybe they'll blend together here. But the first was, how do you find jobs? What are your employers or clients looking for? How do you network? And does gear brand make a difference in getting work? So
Yes.
however you want to tackle those.
Okay. So we'll start from the last question up. Does gear brand make the difference in getting work? The answer to that question is yes. Um, Basically, depending upon what level you're working on, if you go out to a commercial or something like that, where you're working with seasoned pros, they do recognize the major brands of wireless, such as Lectrosonics, Zaxcom, and also recorders, mixers. So there is a stigma that goes along with that. And also, you'll find that same stigma when getting jobs, because a lot of our jobs, which I think answers one of the other questions too, Curtis, it comes from networking. And that's going to be the key to gaining access to these opportunities, because the filmmakers you find online in the groups, whether it's the 48-hour film festivals or whatever it is, you want to get involved with those opportunities. You want to find individuals who have a similar experience level to you. And I think you'll find that those relationships will grow together. So, because that's how the industry works. There's different people that I work with in the industry that I've known for 5 or 6 years, and we continue to work on the same type projects. And I've also have relationships all the way back from my post days, and I continue to stay in touch and work with those people. Does that answer those questions?
I think
Kurt,
so.
did I miss any?
Yeah.
Okay.
No. I think that's good. I think that's really good.
So reach out, bring your best self. Now, listen, if you can't, no one expects you to go buy, $20,000-$30,000 worth of equipment just to go work on a film set. If you should use what you have and use it to the best of the ability, and you should network and find the opportunities, because everyone likes someone who's willing to go out, be humble, and do a good job. And I'm going to bring this up. I mean, Curtis, when I started in this business, I spent the first 7 years of my career having a side gig. And what I mean is, by 99, I'll say 99 is kind of the official number when I started like recording bands and stuff like that. It took me 7 years to be able to even be employed and call audio as my living. And most of those jobs I did were free. I had to literally beg my way into the door to work for free.
and you got the experience, and now
I did. It took time.
People are knocking on your door.
Yes, they are.
It is a highly technical and a very it's not just technical though. There's definitely an art to it as well. But it feels to me like the experience is the most important thing. And so if you're trying to get started, you've got to get some experience. You've got to do what you can. And fortunately, there are a lot of opportunities now. There's so many independent productions now that you could potentially get involved with,
and get and find a mentor as well. I don't know how those relationships are formed these days, but back when a lot of the opportunities I received was just a matter of reaching out with a professional short email, or phone call, and being also clear with these individuals that I wasn't looking for a job. I wasn't looking for, like a opportunity through them. I was looking just for mentorship, which just means someone to share their experience with you, to help guide you on your path,
Exactly. Yep.
And if one doesn't, you're going to have to send a lot of emails, because some may not reach back. Yeah.
Yeah. And they may, it may just be because they're busy. It could be because they've got their hands full with other things. It just could be, don't take any of that personally. Just keep going.
Great point, Curtis. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, we're going to turn to a little bit more of a post question here. And actually, somebody asked earlier which headphones you're using. What headphones are you using today?
These are Sony MDR 7506s.
The classics.
I've used them forever, before I could even remember. So it's the ones I know. And then these are the softies. I think they're called
softies.
If you Google softies for headphones, you'll find these. They come in different colors. They're a must-have, because otherwise these headphones will give you ear fatigue. Because they, that feeling where your ears get really just sore, like out of nowhere. Yeah. So you gotta be careful with those. And what are those headphones you're wearing, Curtis?
These are Bear Dynamic DT770s. These are the 70 ohm version. So I don't use these for production sound as much, more in the studio.
Yeah. They look nice. They look comfortable too. They're over the ear versus on top.
Over the ear. Yep. And so that's a great background. And one thing you said was really interesting to me. You said, I know these. I've used them for so long. I know these headphones. Tell us. Well, actually, let me run the question by you, and this will all come together here. So I'll just read this here. This is from Will. I'm recording ambient audio destined for use in mobile apps where the user is going to be listening on ears or headphones rather than phone speakers. I've been mastering, using the term very loosely here, using Audio-Technica ATH M50Xs, which provide a reasonably flat profile. I'd foolishly assumed the output would sound good on other ear and headphones too. While testing on Apple devices, he found the EarPods to be awful, the AirPods to be marginally better. Other Bluetooth headphones, it was way better, but not what I hoped. So his question really comes down to, how does he choose headphones for post?
Well, I
What
like this guy, Will, already. I mean, just the fact that Will, that you're going through all of these different mediums and listening and testing just shows me that you really, are making sure this is the best it can possibly be. So good for you. And, I think, and I hope I'm answering this question, Curtis. Like it's what you said, is to use what you know. And ask me the latter part of that question again, because I feel like I completely spaced on another thought.
So he's saying, short of me going out to buy one of every conceivable set of ear or headphones, is
Okay.
there a way for me to use a set of good reference headphones and load profiles of popular devices to hear what the audio will sound like? So he actually,
Wow.
A, choosing a set of headphones, and then B, is there some sort of reference thing he
Yeah.
can use to kind of emulate the sound of different headphones?
Certainly. And I do not know myself, Curtis, you may know of any tools that will emulate different sort of devices. Although that's a really interesting concept, and also in a standard practice in, doing like 5-1 mixes and posts and so forth, is I have a controller behind me, because this studio is set up in 5-1 that will fold down to stereo the 5-1 mix, and also there's a mono setting to emulate like televisions that don't have
Mhm.
the low end frequency. So I think the best way to answer that question is to do what he's already doing, which is just test it on multiple devices. And I think the goal is to make it sound good on everything. I think once you achieve that, you've reached your goal.
Okay. And so really, in terms of buying headphones, you're saying you gotta get to know a set of headphones. It's
Exactly.
because there's
Get
because there's no
get the
such thing
ones
as
you
the
like.
perfectly
Yeah.
flat. Yeah. Because I'll be honest, I usually on location, I will generally mix with MDR 7506s.
Okay.
Um, but I would not describe those as perfectly flat. Is that
No.
your experience?
No, no. I mean,
Yeah.
you can see like the curve on different headphones. And one thing to know about the 7506 is if you look at the EQ curve of the headphone, it looks very similar to an EQ curve that you would do for dialogue. It has a high shelf, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a low pass filter in the low end, right? Probably somewhere around, 70 at 6 dB per octave. And then you'll notice it has a little kind of, is it like, and I could be making this up, Curtis. It seems like there's like a little boost. I probably am, like around 3K or 6K. And then there's a
Yeah.
shelf, and I can almost envision it in my mind. So I feel like the headphones, they're definitely not aggressive, but they give me an idea of what the dialogue is translating like, so
Mhm.
is that curve really matching what it would be when it goes in a post, is a question that you have to ask yourself.
Yeah.
So if it's wild, like, if you're using Dr. Beats, don't do that, like it for, if now if it's just casual listening, that's a different thing. But those, some headphones are really hyped in the low
Yeah.
end and highs. And and to Will's question is, it's good to listen on those mediums, because sometimes you don't know what's there until those frequencies are boosted. Because you got to think about, like, being in post, that's like boosting your low end on your sub.
Mhm. Mhm.
So there could be something ugly in that low end that you don't know about.
Sure.
So that's why you have to just listen to all these devices. And the other thing is, don't get so stuck on headphones. Listen on monitors. Headphones are a great reference tool when you don't want the sound escaping, but nothing is going to be better than listening on a properly quality pair of monitors in a stereo environment in a treated room. Because that's
That's the
where,
ideal. Yeah.
yeah, that's the ideal.
Yeah. And honestly, in Will's particular case, he is actually mixing for that purpose, knowing that the
Okay,
audience would be using headphones. So, but
I see.
still, I think there's the trick with headphones is that it's a kind of an unnatural way to listen. I mean, you don't,
Yeah,
like, in the real world, it's not this way. What
yeah,
we're being fed by most program material is mixed in a way that's kind of different from real world experience.
yeah. Yeah, but
But
but it's also like an evolving thing too, Curtis. Like, how many it seems like we're all listening on headphones now.
yeah,
So
true.
like the idea that we're going to be in this environment where we're going to get this true stereo experience is also changing. And
Yeah.
and so just by but I think the accuracy will find is better through monitors, that we're getting more of the truth. But I know guys, I mean, who are music mixers who have mixed headphones their whole careers just because they never really had the opportunity to even have a stereo monitoring system in their home
In a
studio
decent,
set. And it
yeah,
sounds amazing. Like they get
yeah,
great results. So it all comes down to what do you know and what works for you
yeah.
is really important.
Get
And
to know a set of headphones for sure. Yeah,
and t- and
spend a
t-
lot of time.
and test it. And Will's on the right track. Test it on the mediums. That's something we used to do back in the day before we had streaming and MP3s and all that. Is you would burn a disc, a CD,
Mhm.
and you would burn. You would do a real time. I had this Alesis Masterlink, which could actually burn down a CD print in real time of a recording, AES in, and then I would have to press render, and it would be a whole process, and it would render the CD, and then we would all travel to the car and listen in the car. And it was all
And then
about,
and maybe switch seats too. Then you get the front seat
yeah,
first, and then
yeah,
you get
yeah.
to sit in the back seat.
And then you would put on Pink Floyd The Wall as a reference,
Yeah.
and then all of your heads would just go down like that because you'd realize that you are so far not even close to that level of sonic
Yeah.
perfection. Yeah.
But that's a part of the experience too. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all part of the experience that you build over time that refines your
Sure.
ability to do these things. You solve a little problem at a time, one after
That's
the other.
right.
So it's really
Yeah.
persistence. So,
Yeah.
well, here's a broad question for you from
Okay.
our friend Dick. Dick is, I believe, over in the Netherlands.
Nice.
He'd like to hear if Michael can share any tips to be a better production sound mixer. For example, can you train your hearing to provide better sound? Or are there any other sort of tips you can provide?
Wow, great question. I mean, I would say just, practice, get as much experience listening as you can. I don't know if there's any other way to really train your ears to be a better mixer as much as it is that you have to get more experience to get your listening to be better. And, because there's a difference between hearing and listening. And hearing is something that like younger people, like my 4-year-old has way better hearing than I do
Mhm.
because I'm in my 40s, he's 4. So, and as you age, your hearing changes, all that kind of stuff. But the listening is the most important part. So gosh, I wish I could, as far as like any other general advice, meet other production sound mixers who are working in your craft or have more experience into you. There's some great channels out there. Curtis Judd, I have a sound channel. There's a lot of social mediums, but also go to the social sites like JW Sound Group it's like the OG. That's like I literally you'd be amazed what I learned on JW Sound. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
are places, guys, online where all the movie mixers and film mixers hang out. And if you
Mhm.
can find those groups, they're gold mines, even if you're just a fly on the wall.
Yep.
I think you'll also find that people working in the craft love to share information. And as far as they love to educate and give back because it feels good to give back. So
Yep. Yep. Very good. Well, I think we got covered some great stuff here. There is let me just scan through the comments here real
sure.
quick that see if there was any good things we wanted to pull up on the screen. Well, we got to thank we got a couple things here. Rob, thanks for the super chat, and Vincent as well. Thank you for that. All right, we
So
had
Vincent Chin. See, there's another guy, Vincent Rothberg. When I was saying earlier that is I've seen out there. Okay, so now I know. Now I know two Vincents.
Yep, and then we had a couple questions here about your headphones, but I think we got that covered here. So you're using the 7506s. Here's a question: How do you connect an Octava MK012 to a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K? What accessories do I need?
There's
I
the
can.
6. Oh, go ahead, Curtis. Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say in that case, I know there's a Blackmagic sells. There's they're using a mini XLR in on the camera, so there's a little adapter from Blackmagic. I'll put a link down below for that
Those
after the show here.
cameras are amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, for what they do, like they can take a time code input,
Yep.
which is huge, and I've seen them on like professional shoots, the 4K and 6K. I just wanted to
What
interject that. I just,
interesting. So what are they using them for? Are those gonna be like their crash cams? Are they sticking them on
oh,
gimbals
no,
or
no, they use them just for interviews and corporate stuff, and you see
okay.
them used all the time.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they want time code, and there's these multi-camera shoots because they get these amazing images out of them. And you look at
Yeah.
it and you go, "That's a $1,300 camera?
Yeah.
That looks incredible." And you're like, "Why did I buy a GH5?" Oh.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing what they can do. That
No,
is
I love my
just
GH5.
amazing. It's
Yeah.
getting the job done.
This is
So
a GH5S that I'm shooting on now.
okay. It's
Yeah.
putting out a good image, I'd say.
Well,
Doing well for
I've
us.
got the 10 to 25 on it, Curtis. The
Okay.
1.2, 10 to 25, they're new. Are you familiar with much
I
of their
haven't used that one. Yeah, no, that one I
yeah,
haven't used.
it's they're like Zoom Prime, so it's like a 10 to 25 1.2. And,
Wow.
it
Wow.
yeah, so it's and obviously on a wide lens like this, even at 1.2, you're gonna double that for micro third, so you're looking at like
Right.
2.4 right
Right.
now. And so you get a little bit of that depth of field on a wide I mean, you have to try so hard on a micro four thirds to like, it takes like a miracle to get it. Yeah. But anyway, yeah,
Um,
good question, yeah.
yeah, so we got there's someone who's, mentioning that the mic here looks like it was taken from Star Trek. I would agree. It's definitely got the 1950s kind of
Yeah.
industrial design vibe going with it.
You definitely win the coolest microphone award
Well, I don't know.
with that
I'm actually
Earthworks.
curious. So the C414
Yeah,
ULS,
yeah.
that one I'm not familiar with, and they don't make that particular model anymore, do they?
No.
Or do they?
They just basically updated the models, I think, just over time, and that could have a lot to do with the parts that they use inside of the microphone. This one was purchased in the late '90s. The only mistake I made was not buying 2,
Yeah,
and I'm so glad for this microphone. I don't use this microphone in production sound at all, and if I had 2 of them, I could. You see what I mean? I could do raw mid-sides or different, and
yeah,
to try to find one to match this would be very difficult because 'cause I'd have to find the old one, but it was been sitting in my mic closet for years, and the YouTube and streaming thing actually brought it back to life, so I'm so happy about that.
yeah,
It's not
and I
being
think it
wasted.
it works nicely with your voice too. It's a
Yeah.
good fit. Good fit. All right, Lloyd, and Michael, for your background, I don't know if you know Lloyd. Lloyd has a background in the music world as well for many years,
Love
but
it.
he has a good question here. As a person with a recording engineer background, to get a start in production sound, would you suggest starting as a utility or smaller projects as a mixer?
Utility. If you are really committed, Lloyd, and you want to make a change, go to a market, such as Atlanta, New York, LA, or Louisiana. Hopefully, yeah, Louisiana, I think, still has their film credit. They got it back, I believe. And I hope I'm
Okay.
telling you correct. Not North Carolina. So just to repeat: New York, Atlanta, Louisiana, California. You have to go to a market where there is a film industry, number one. Number two, Albuquerque also has some stuff. And then yeah, join the union and work as a sound utility. That's the way
Okay.
to do it. You can absolutely start and try to work as a mixer, but trying to break in as a mixer without any film experience on anything on like a higher end show, is impossible, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's like going straight to a manager position. It's tough. It's
Yeah,
just doesn't
the
happen a
corporate,
lot.
yeah, because in the hiring of these, and I run into it too, because I'm competing against LA resumes that are 3 miles long.
Right.
And they look at me with 6 years union experience and they go, you know? So it's just a dice, but a lot of it has to do with what you've worked on. So that's the other weird thing about resumes. You can have one 2 miles long, but they're really looking for certain shows.
Yeah.
Because, and that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, so to answer that question, but if you're like, no, I don't want to work on that. I'm thinking more like there's films in my area and independent films, and I'm totally happy with that. And I'm connected to people in my market and know people in that world. Yeah, have at it. But,
Yep.
the craft, there's so much to know about being on a film set and learning how to work on a film set that really, you can also come on as a PA, and there's different ways to get on. Like, I know sound utilities in our market who started as a PA because they couldn't get sound utility opportunities. And they worked as background PA, different positions, so they could just learn how to be on set and figure out the flow.
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Um, Another question here from Mark. Is the union requirement stuff pretty much universal in the USA? I don't think I've ever heard of anyone recently being blocked in the UK because of not being in one. So yeah, maybe you could explain a little bit about the union and how that works
Well, I can
here.
only speak about the unions here in the US, and as far as the ones that I'm a member of, which is Local 479, which covers Georgia and some parts outside of Georgia, and it covers, you know, multiple crafts as well, not just sound. There's a sound union also in LA, 695, that they have their own union there just for sound. And, as far as there are residency requirements, and there are also, you have to be voted in, and you can go to their website. It's IATSE, and I'd have to look up let me actually look it up. IATSE 479. IATSE. Try to give them a real website here. Yeah, just go to www.iatse.net, and then you will find information about, all the stuff with unions from a much more detailed approach.
Yep. Good. All right. Just back on something we covered, I think it was on Will's question. White Sea Studio, music engineer, has covered software to tune profiles in monitors or headphones a few months ago. So if you wanted to emulate, but I would definitely get yourself in the different spots as well. Take that recording to as many different places as you can, different sets of headphones, so on and so forth.
See, that's so amazing to me. Like just all this, emulation technology for that stuff. It's incredible.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about noise. Is that a whole other stream?
Well, we can.
Noise assist. Yeah, man, that's exciting.
So
that's exciting. I thought it was worth talking.
So let's talk about that just a little bit. So I actually have a set of samples out today. So I put out a video. If you go to YouTube and do a search for noise assist, I've got some audio samples there. I would say my impression is that, first of all, there's a question about when is this going to be useful? Because I don't think it's useful across the board. So if you're doing a narrative piece, I think really what makes sense here to me is if there's a daily workflow, or if you're going to have, some preliminary mixes that you need to have done, and you are dealing with some sort of, and I would say very specifically, it can be a broadband noise, but it has to be pretty consistent. So it's going to be a fan, a generator, something consistent. I think you can realistically get a reduction of somewhere around, I would say 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 dB. And to me, that's substantial. Like some people scoff at that, like, oh, it's not that great.
Yeah.
And, people see the price tag too. It's $600 for the plugin. So I think for a production, there are productions where that's nothing. It's like, okay, totally makes sense. We're going to need it. Let's get it. Let's do it. But I think everyone needs to go into it with the right kind of mindset, which is this is really kind of to take the edge off to produce a mix. Or if you're going to be doing, if you're doing some, I've ended up doing a couple of live things, believe it or not, on my 888. I mean, it's a weird thing to do, but I found myself in a position where, it made sense. And so,
because you can do that as an audio interface, right?
It's only a stereo, but then you could also, it's got Dante. So you can
Dante.
You can do 16 channels of Dante as well. So, but noise assist is, to me, it marks kind of an interesting step forward that you're starting to see these types of things in the production field recorder mixers. I think it's really interesting. Auto mix is another thing that I have actually found pretty useful. When I'm doing corporate stuff and I've got to turn this thing quickly, I would much rather let's turn on that auto mix. I don't. I'm also the gaffer. I'm also the cameraman. I'm not going to have time to do a really nice mix otherwise. So, turn I did that sucker on.
I did this thing in January, this corporate thing, and it was a round table with 16 people.
Oh,
and
wow!
I had to rent some of the wireless, and I put the 688 and the 633 together, and so I had to auto mix on the 633 into one of the ISOs on the 688, which means I had to only use 11 inputs on the 688 because I had to reserve that 12. It worked like a charm. I mean, it was amazing. The hardest part was coordinating all the wireless, but we were able to get LPDAs, like, I mean, literally down their throat. So it was pretty, it was just one of these rooms, and you're just like, is this gonna work? Like, what like, we literally, Curtis,
Yeah.
we had them lined up to get wiring. Luckily, I had a second guy. There's no way one person could handle, I mean, that's insane.
Yeah.
So I had, me and Scott Beatty, he had them, like, lined up, and then we had to make an announcement. If anyone has to use the restroom, please do not go without coming to see us so we could, 'cause they'll, I'm thinking out of 16 people, somebody's gonna
Yeah.
take one of these
Yep. They'll drop it
$1,500
in.
transmitters to the
It's gonna
can,
drop.
and they're not
It
even gonna tell us it happened, you know?
The life of a production sound mixer. These are the
Yeah.
things that you encounter.
But yeah, Dugan auto mixes, I mean, and I did it, I didn't I've used it maybe a handful of times in narrative work for very specific situations. But in
Right.
Atlanta season 2, I was running, and season 1, the 788, which is like 8 ISOs. I mean, then you have the 8 channel if you wanna have a comm system. So you're like, literally, that's not enough for TV.
Right. Right.
But I had the 633 because I bought that when it came out. So I was auto mixing the 633 into one of the ISOs of the 788, and then bringing that in, and it worked, but it was very dodgy. Like, if the one thing I learned about Dugan Autonomous, your gain staging has to be perfect. And not only does it have to be perfect, it also has to be, because it uses the post level to determine how to work with the auto mix. That's all you got to really remember, is post fade level is how it works. And then if one wire gets hit or anything, auto mix goes, oh, I go over here. So you get, you're like, oh God, where's that coming from? So you mix like 2 hands, but it's a super useful tool. Now, of course, on the X3, we have Aaton Mix now, which I have installed on here, and which is part of the version 3 upgrades. I also have 24 subgroups, all with independent specific assignable output routing to any of the 32 Dante or 8 ADS or 8 analog. And then also 2 built-in master auxiliaries as well. So they added all that in version 3. So I'm still even trying to wrap my head around all of the possibilities, because on the X3, we actually have 4 auto mix buses. See, on the 8 series, not trying to, you have 2, you have left and right.
2. Right.
And I didn't even know that until someone told me on a YouTube video. Said, you got a second auto mix. I was like, I do, and I was like, you're awesome. I just learned something from you. So, but on this one, you can actually send a subgroup auto mix out of an auxiliary 1 or 2 or left and right for 4. So what that means is you can take a separate ISO, like lav ISOs, do an auto mix and send it to an independent out, independent of your left right bus. So it really, I'm glad it doesn't have any more inputs and outputs, because my mind would start to get stretched. Because and I think that's another thing, Curtis, too, really, especially because these 8 series recorders, I mean, they're so amazing. This new technology, not only from Aaton, but Sound Devices and everyone, is just incredible. You got to know signal flow better than you ever did before. Because once you start talking about buses and subgroups, you're working on a console now. You're in a whole other, and it makes it so much more fun, right? Like, I like just bending my mind on all the different things you can do.
And really, if you've got to solve a problem, you better know your stuff too, because you got to go through that signal chain that's all inside the box and figure out, okay, where am I going wrong here?
Yeah. I have a friend who's a dialogue editor here in Atlanta, and he said, you get paid to solve the problems. That's what they're paying you for. It's not when everything works; it's when it doesn't work. And
it's when it doesn't.
And to me, I just expect it. I mean, there's nothing like the feeling of holding up a production. Whether it's a $50 million movie that's probably costing them, who knows? I'm just guessing $30,000 an hour to make, and you're at the cart and you're saying, I need a minute, and everyone's waiting, because it's going to happen, and he's just call me and say, hey, we got a technical, we need just a minute. And it's just this game of like staying calm, and how long is it going to take? We just need to do a quick change out. We need 4 minutes, and they want times. And then the other thing is moments away. They love that, moments away. That's why I always like a real nice, calm and cool comm mic that I can communicate to everyone in the event. because I say not if the event, in the event. I
when it
guarantee you the
happens.
gear will stop working exactly when it counts. And
Yeah.
all you gotta do is just have a plan B, and you'll feel really
Yeah.
good when you do.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So here's a quick one from Rob. Michael, do you do post-production sound mixing and editing also? If so, have you learned any tips from that one area that translates to production sound?
Yeah, wow. I have done, all of the post-production mixing I have done has been really on independent films. I've done like 5-1 mixing, and also corporate type stuff throughout the year. So, I'm not working on the type of scale projects that I am as a production sound mixer because that's really where my career is. So, um, what am I mixing for post right now? YouTube videos that I put on my channel.
But that's experience, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
if
of
somebody's looking
course.
for experience, there's a way to
But
do. There's this
oh,
other.
yeah, like, I mean, I still love mixing post, and I love that I get to do it on my terms on the projects that I want to work on,
Mhm.
to take on, I still have some corporate stuff that'll come through and some guys that actually work with me on that because obviously when I'm busy, I'm not able to handle that stuff. So I've got different people that work with me in my what's the world my world, that can actually take that on. And it's great. I love post stuff. I think through the years when I was doing it real heavy, it got
Mhm.
really difficult to be in the studio by myself staring at a computer screen. And I think being on a film set was just the antithesis to that. It was the exact opposite, to be able to be around people and collaborate. So that's kind of where I found my home.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a different fit for everybody. There's some
Oh
that are
yeah.
probably, you seem like a pretty gregarious, extroverted kind of guy.
Yeah,
So
but
you need
ask
that
a
energy.
but ask me on a Fraturday, which is, ask me that question again, Curtis, a Fraturday at 4 a.m. in the morning when I still haven't been home yet, on
Yeah.
a Saturday.
You might
Yeah,
might have a different
I might
answer.
have a different answer for you then. Yeah.
Oh, J.H. Brooks, thank you for the super chats here. We're going to get these super chats over to this is all for Michael today. So,
Oh, no, 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 no.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so here's the next question. One more, I think. Back
Okay.
when I was, oh, maybe is this a question? Let's see. Maybe it's a comment. Back when I was in the industry, I found when my paltry credits were being reviewed, the PM in the US was looking for people they knew from that show they could call. Interesting.
Yeah. So the UPM, did they say, or the production mixer? You said PM.
Production. Yeah,
I think it
PM.
means
Yeah.
UPM, unit production manager.
Oh,
Or
okay.
and and
Okay.
and they said that they were looking for a job and they wanted to hire the people they know.
Yeah. Yep.
Happens all the time.
Yep.
People want to work with their relationships
Mhm.
and don't get frustrated trying to, you know, um, let that get in your head. It's just a
Yeah.
matter of, and one of the things that, if I had any real advice that I want to give to people is just don't, you know, be confident in what your skills are and what you do and let them kind of choose or decide, because once they have their mind made up to go different, there's very little you can do to try to change it.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
you know,
Yep. Just keep focusing. Just keep
yeah,
delivering
yeah,
good product,
happens to me all the time.
good
Yeah,
sound. Yeah. Cool.
that's right.
Um,
Good point, Curtis.
yeah, just keep at it. All right. Alexi says very interesting to compare the noise assist with the Cedar DNS too. So do you ever use
Ooh,
Cedar?
did you compare those two on your video, Curtis?
No, I didn't. I didn't. No, I didn't because I didn't have a Cedar on hand.
By the
I
way,
didn't have a way to put one.
I love Curtis Judd videos, Curtis Judd audio and Curtis. Like seriously, Curtis, I just got to give you props because you have the most, what's the word, consistent and reliable professional reviews for sound stuff on YouTube. Period. I mean,
Thank you.
and it's just you can always like literally. The only thing I'll say is that when you get to that screen which says the pros and cons,
Mhm.
then I could just be done.
Right.
I'm just kidding.
Well, that's actually the idea.
Oh, okay, yeah,
The idea is that if
yeah,
somebody is only
yeah,
marginally interested in a topic,
yeah,
boom, here's the summary. Now they know the video exists. If they ever, find them themselves in a situation where they're, oh, you know what?
yeah,
I do need to invest in gear in this domain. Then they can come
yeah,
back because they already saw. Anyway, that's the idea.
yeah. And when I first started my YouTube channel, like I had no lighting equipment. and I had no real idea like how to light. I mean, obviously I knew from being on set some of the general stuff, but not as much as I needed to know. And then by watching your videos on lighting, and if you remember, I was asking questions even before we officially met. I was like, "Hey, Curtis, how do you do this? Or what is that? What kind of light?" And you would say, "Yeah, you just, and so that was super helpful." But what's interesting is the ones who are watching your Curtis Judd audio channel should also watch your Curtis Judd channel, because you need to know lighting as a production sound mixer. Because if you can speak the language with the gaffer, the DP, and everyone on set and have more of an understanding of what they're doing, you're going to have a better experience, and you're going to get better sound as a result.
Yep.
Because there's nothing like knowing the name of a piece of equipment that they're using, because they go, this person has taken the time to understand what this is. I think I will turn off that fan for them, So anyway, I just wanted to,
You're absolutely right. And I imagine your boom op runs into that all day long.
Oh, yeah.
So your boom op is right up there and they're like, okay, nope, we're getting a shadow. Nope,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
a shadow there.
Like-
it says,
like-
well, what if
like
I stand on the other side of this
Yeah.
joker? Is that okay?
Yeah, like Alan Williams from Sound
Yeah.
Speeds. He knows the name
Yeah.
of every light, every
Yeah.
piece of equipment. So when he needs to ask that question, he goes for it,
Yeah.
And so it's really the craft of filmmaking that we're doing. And everyone has a role in different things, but if you can approach it as a filmmaker, it's more of a collaborative approach, which means, and you can always ask the question, hey, what is that? What are you using there? And they're going to be like, oh my God, this person actually took the time to learn about what I'm doing, versus like the sound guy, that comes out, could you turn that off? That thing over there is making, people are like, man, no, it's like, oh, hey, what kind of Jenny is that? That's pretty cool. I really like, they're like, oh yeah. They'll love to show you their stuff. And then they're your best friends,
Yeah. One last one, I guess. I said that before, but this is really the last one.
No, yeah, it's okay.
Do you still record backup recordings?
Do I still record backup recordings?
Do you record dual cards on?
I do.
Whenever, yeah.
I do. And this is coming from someone who knows my workflow too. So moving forward, when I was working with the 688 CL12, I was recording a backup AES out to the 788. Okay. I was doing the mix plus ISOs, and then I would combine the oddball ISOs when it would go over the 8 inputs. Because in the routing menu, you can just, submix channels or whatever. So on the Aaton X3, my plan is to not, because there's an SSD, there's 2 SDs, and also a USB drive. So that's 4 simultaneous media. So, the backup is the other drives. And someone made an interesting point, and I think it was Jeff Wexler, who is Career Achievement Award CAS mixer, just a legend in the sound business. And he actually started JW Sound Group. And he said, and I think it was either him or Glenn True, that said, this whole thing about backup recorders, what about backup wireless? What about backup power? What about a backup mixer? Because the recorder is not the only thing that can fail on a film set. And at a certain point, you got to really have a plan for everything in place. Now, I always have a backup recorder in the trailer, and I always have a backup system, which is why I didn't sell my 688 CL12, because in the event that I lose power, wireless, whatever, right? It just explodes. You know what I mean?
Right.
So the sound card and I've met guys who have got power surges who have lost $200,000 in one instance, and the production company would have to make an insurance claim from a surge. And literally, you got to be ready to go within 10, 15, 20 minutes. What they want to hear is, you got a plan. Don't you have another sound card in the trailer? I sure do. I got a second sound card. You roll it out and you go. So that's the 2-part answer to the backup question. Am I doing and what's funny is they asked backup and I answered it as a double system, which tells you that I'm not listening as well as I should to the questions, because a double system is when you have a second recorder, right? And a backup could also be like another system. Like, Curtis, when you go out to a sound gig, obviously you have your 888, right?
Yep.
Do you have a second recorder that you bring with you in the event that you have an issue with the 888 on set?
I do. It's either the Mix Pre 10 or it's the
Yeah.
633, depending on the
Yeah.
job. Yep.
Doesn't that just keep your blood pressure lower?
Absolutely, and I've had to pull it out. There was one
Yeah. Oh,
last
yeah.
summer I had to pull it out. It was,
Yeah.
what was it? The, American Chopper. Do you remember the Orange County Chopper show? What was that called? American Chopper? They did a little
Yeah,
piece out
yeah.
here in Utah.
Oh,
So
nice.
the guy came out and, we followed him around and, there were requirements up front, of course, on the call sheet, and we knew how many channels we needed. And of course, we
Nice.
get there and they need one more channel. So it's
Yep.
like, oh, 633 is not set up for that.
Ah,
so
yeah.
so I had to pull the 10T out, and that's what we ended up using, and it worked fine.
Yeah, and you save the day like that. I mean, and
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
thing is there is that expectation of just, uh like having the gear, and
Yep.
this gear thing it gets way cooler. Like, I think, if you're first starting out, you're like, oh, what microphone should I get, or what recorder should I get, or how do I plug this into this? And we all have these questions, and it's very inherent to our craft when we're learning. And then as you evolve, the game gets even cooler because it's about, how do I configure this to work with this, or should I sell this, should I not sell this, and all of the different things, so, and I'm telling this for myself, because I look at that 888 and I say, I need the 888. I say, Curtis Judd has got an 888. Okay, then I should definitely have an 888. Then I'm looking at the Cantar Mini, and it's
Yeah,
like,
right,
do I
right.
need a Cantar Mini? No, I don't. But I keep telling myself every other day that I need.
Yeah, yeah. It is a fun business, and there's so much to
Yeah.
learn. It's really fulfilling, has been definitely
Yeah.
been my
And I
experience.
look forward to watching your video on the noise assist.
All right. Well,
And checking that, because I was really interested in hearing your opinion on that, and I think you're absolutely right that it's got to be the appropriate type workflow for it. And I'm not one of these guys that's like, if I see some new technology, you always have like the old audio mixers coming, you can't use that on a film set, like,
right,
you have
right.
all of this, like, and you got to be careful of that, because a lot of those guys had that attitude about analog tape when it went to Pro Tools, and a lot of them stopped working in the business as a result. And so you just got to go, okay, it's just another tool,
Yep, it is.
and it's not going to make or break any gig, but you want to be careful. If you're new to the recorder, don't show up and just start using it a lot, because you're gonna find yourself in trouble. I would say that's my only thing. Use with caution.
You use what yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. All right, well, we've taken a good bit of your Sunday today. Thank you so much for your generous, spending all this time with us and sharing so much information. We really appreciate it, Michael.
Sure. Well, it's always a blast, and I really enjoy your content, Curtis, and your channel, and and it's just, we're all together in this, in the audio community, and I just want to say, I hope everyone is staying safe and well, during this time, and and that we all get back to work real soon.
Yeah, hope so.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yep.
All right. Thanks again, Michael. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, guys.